Hi everybody and welcome to episode 8 of Life on the Lines. This episode was filmed outdoors during the Remembrance Day weekend. So there's a video to accompany this podcast, and if you hear any strange noises, rustling, any of that stuff, it's because we did it outdoors and it's on a different podcast setup. Let us know what you think of it. If you do get the chance to watch the video, again, let me know what you think. If you want to see more of that, then brilliant, just let me know. And my guests today were Paul Flynn, somebody that I joined the military with, essentially. We're both on the commando course together. And Dougie Scott, somebody that I served in Afghanistan with. And both remain very good friends to this day. So hope you enjoy the episode and we'll get straight to it. For me, living in Scotland, I just feel like... I've never really been one for a parade, mate. I know we're going to Spinners on Sunday, but I never went to parades really, unless I was in the military. I just preferred to go up in the mountains on my own, rather than get dressed up and do all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I would have said probably the same, but last year's I really enjoyed the parade.
Yeah.
But I think that was because, last year's was actually the first one I think I've done sober or not hanging a bit.
Yeah.
So I actually really took it in. Was a wee bit more present than normal, I would say.
Where were you?
Spinners.
Spinners, yeah.
Yeah. And the service and that was brilliant, to be honest.
It's funny, isn't it? Like Commando Memorial, they do the main service at Fort William.
Oh.
I would have thought they'd do it up at Spain Bridge, but they do that a little bit later.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's the way forward. Did you ever do them in London, Flindog?
Never. Well, I do. I do them locally. My local one's quite good to get like bagpipes out. All the mods come out. All the rockers come out. Like there's quite a big collection of like groups of people that you know, like clubs and that come out and do it.
Yeah.
It's quite good. It's very good to be fair. But I want to do I prefer doing the more like you say like the parade thing. I find quite that sounds terrible, like tedious, and I think that's because like you have a picture of it in the army where it was always like you're being seen off.
Yeah.
You know, oh, you've got to do this, and there's like 200 of you marching down a road.
It was a stress.
Yeah, it was. And if your boots weren't clean enough, you get hammered. If your uniform weren't good enough, you get hammered. But like, I'm really into like doing the different types of ones, and there's some like great places in the UK you can go do them now. You know, like you can go up Great Gable, for example. This one's unbelievable because you're looking over Ben Nevis.
No, it's best. Like
you know, you can go to the auditorium down in Staffordshire, which is massive.
The Arboretum.
That's it.
Yeah.
Wrong word. You know, like and so on and so on, and then you can do the Mall. That's quite impressive with everyone down there.
Yeah. It would actually be good to go and do one in London, because it would be like every now and again. I think we should rotate it, do like a wilderness one, big parade one where we all kind of go dress up and whatnot, and we'd just do something different every year. Or
yeah, I like Spinners. Like
yeah,
obviously home of the Commandos, and I just really enjoyed last year. You know, doing the Commando speed match route, the run, a bit of fizz beforehand, and and then actually just being present for the service. And like you said, Flynn, it's like in the military, it was just so like tedious. It was a stress going up. It was almost like you were made to be there.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously we're choosing to be here and take it all in. It was just so much better. And I wasn't obviously rough hanging out after being on the piss the night before, which I've done loads of times. And you're just wanting the service to be over and get back on it, to be honest.
Just try not to faint.
Yeah, well, I think, again, a lot of veterans use this to get together, and then it can easily become just another piss-up.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're missing the reason that you're actually there, and it's to remember those that can't.
Yeah.
You know? And I think the best way I think of remembering is getting together with all us guys and creating new memories.
Yeah.
As in continue to live rather than just reminisce. My view, anyway.
Right.
Although I still think it's good to reminisce because we've got a lot in common and obviously all got a past together.
Yeah, I agree with you, mate. I think it's just trying to get the right sort of balance, and the keys to try and make sure you're creating the new memories with people, and you know, in the military, you used to have a relationship with the outdoors, and the outdoors would be a thrashing ground, wouldn't it? So like you'd have a opinion of it where you get out there, it would rain, you'd be on exercise for a week, and so for a long period you'd be like, I don't want anything to do with the outdoors. But now you realise, one, I actually know quite a lot about what I'm doing out there. Two, it's different when it's on your terms. Definitely. And like when, right now out here, if we want to go in that water, it's our choice.
Yeah.
It's not somebody saying you get in that water associating it with what it used to be. But and remembering people, like you said before, the parade thing can be a bit of a stress. I remember my first ever one when I was a sprog in 29. I hadn't even passed the commando course at this stage, and there was a guy who was non-commando trained with me. We were living out in HMS Drake, which is like 5 miles away from the Citadel, and I was waiting on him to pick me up and take me to parade, and lo and behold, he picked me up late. So I'm probably the newest person in the regiment running across the parade square late in front of the whole regiment, and I got absolutely destroyed for that. I was at the servicing bay. I needed to clean the grease out the servicing bay, and for a week, and every single day it was done, it would be the same sort of level. It was awful, but yeah. So I'm quite happy not to do parades, but.
Yeah, I try to think of remembering the Remembrance Day parades that we did when we were in. Obviously, being 7 Battery, Speen Bridge was a lot, and it was like you had to clean the gun and all that. We do a gun salute, and you had to clean the gun after and everything. It was just, it took away from actually what it's about, I think.
Yeah.
And
you only went to Speen Bridge first time last year?
Last year, yeah.
Yeah.
And then since then I've been 4 times. 4th time tomorrow.
Yeah. We've got a love it.
For a year.
Yeah. It's a special place, though, I think.
And I think when it comes to remembering, I think we've all kind of got a little bit of a personal touch, because we'll probably just go through a little bit of a background about what we did in the military in terms of tours. And Flinny, you can start first because you were the first one out there. So a little bit of your operational experience.
Yeah, I went Iraq in 2003. I think we were there like 5 months. There for the opening day of the war. So we bombarded Iraq, and then we flew over in helicopters afterwards, Chinooks.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a big step when you're 18. Blokes an helicopter had crashed the day before with blokes from the regiment on it. So it really hit home as a young boy that you could fucking be next.
What was the mood in the regiment like when that happened? Because I remember hearing about that. I wasn't in at the time. I remember reading about it, watching it in the news.
He was quite a big character, from what I can believe. I don't know enough about the guy, but a lot of people knew him, so people were upset, a bit devastated over it.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing come out about the helicopter, so obviously you didn't know if it was shot down or if it was a malfunction or whatever. Come out later on, it was a malfunction. The helicopter broke down basically, and then crashed. But yeah, and then obviously blokes are really know it's the real thing now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it hits home pretty soon, doesn't it? I remember actually from Afghan, because the majority of what we did operationally was Afghan. And I remember there was the first Afghan tour, wasn't it, Jakarta, and nothing really happened, did it? Yeah. So it was I remember before that happened, there was a lot of fuss about how...
They were up in the mountains for that one.
Yeah, and Tora Bora Mountains and...
2001, I think.
I can always remember doing mountain training and them saying this is what Afghan was like.
Yeah, and it was supposed to be, because I was at Lympstone at the time, and it was supposed to be the real deal going to Afghanistan, and because of what had happened with the Russians, it was seen as this unconquerable land, and a lot of people are going to die, and it never really it wasn't really kinetic for conventional forces out there, so there wasn't much going on, and then it just popped back up, didn't it, in 2006?
2006. We took over from the Americans that were down in Helmand, but they weren't fighting in Helmand. They were just like literally sitting in their vehicles. They didn't have any interest in it.
Yeah, and then I think 16 Air Assault went on Herrick 4.
Yeah.
I think there was obviously a few Herricks before that, but there was no real kind of, engagement with the enemy and that. But the real kind of operation, I think, started in Herrick 4. I can always remember getting that brief of us going out in Herrick 5 from 16 Air Assault saying, like, this is the real deal. And it's not if you get contacted, it's when. And then describing kind of contacts out there, getting contacted for 3 or 4 sides and, having to hug your vehicle's wheels to try and get some cover and things like that. So I can remember that vividly, like, as a 20-year-old, just thinking, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Right, here we go. Here we fucking go.
I know. And I remember the build-up to it. I remember it's like somebody that we all sort of lost, and probably a major part of doing these sorts of things is Doobs, and before Herrick 5 for us, me and him went to Thailand for 3 weeks and just like basically did everything that we wanted to do. Massive, we were young, so it was on the piss. It was scuba diving, seeing the sights, all the rest of it. And I remember the one conversation with him, and it was towards the end of the holiday, and he said, it's like Anchorman, I think it must have been, should we get new suits? And because Thailand, you could get a new suit for like, for nothing, so you get a tailored suit, made to measure, all that. And so we got suits. He ended up getting 2, I got 1. He lent me the money for mine because I was skint, not the best for money. And we made like a commitment there, and we were like, when we get back home, we're going to wear these suits because we might not get the chance to wear them, because it did feel real, like
absolutely,
before we went there. And it really bothered me that he never wore his. We had a night out, and it's actually my little brother wore one of his suits, and he just came out in his blue San Diego famous t-shirt, and it always bothered me. Never really got the chance, even though we sort of committed to it. And yeah,
it's mad how, like, the mentality of, I was 20 at the time. I think you maybe 21 or something, Fitz. But
yeah,
like, you're getting told how real this is, and then obviously you're also hearing about, some of the paras that are dying and things out there, that you were kind of contemplating the fact that you'd maybe not come back. I know for my brother, my twin brother Cammy, he actually got a bank loan out and was like, I think it's just like $2,000 or something, and he was like, I'm just gonna take this out and spank it because I might die. Do you know what I mean? For a 20-year-old to be, facing death like that, and just like, I'll just take out a loan and spank it because I might die. It's mad to think where you had to go mentally as a young man.
Yeah.
And I can also remember a vivid story when we were talking about Doobs, which is obviously quite hard for me to say and reminisce, was flying out there again after these briefs of how, real it is out there. Flying out, I was sat next to him on the plane out there, and I can remember saying to him, like, right, first tour, here we go, kind of thing. And it's mad to think that not everybody on this plane's going to come home. And he was like, I know. And I actually said to him, who do you think it'll be that doesn't come home? Which is quite, an open question there, quite an immature question probably. But his exact words was, it'll not be somebody shit. It'll always be good soldiers that die. And obviously, as we know, it was him. Or one of them was him.
Yeah, it's wild what you have to go through, and I suppose that was the journey there. I remember landing in Camp Bastion, and we got off the helicopter, and it was sunset, and there was just this massive sort of blood red sun going down, and it felt like something that you'd seen in the movies, but it felt real.
Yeah.
Immediately there was so much sort of activity, there was a buzz, there was a smell, and I feel like that smell, it's so weird, but every now and again it just
hits you bang.
It filters in, and it was interesting, but like I immediately felt like it was real.
Yeah.
And no sort of warm up, just straight sort of in. This is for real. Like
I can remember, obviously in Herrick, what 7 battery had, we had MOG North, so Mobile Operational Group North, where we were basically in the middle of the desert, and it was so that we could fire upon, I think it was Nowzad and Musakala.
Mm-hmm.
And when we flew out there, we got told that like around that area there's a lot of minefields, like old Russian minefields, and it's actually where, I can't remember what his name is, Ben, do you know the guy for 7 Para-J?
I know who you
Lost,
mean.
I think
Yeah,
he lost his
Ben.
arms and legs.
It's not Ben Jackson. No.
It's not.
No,
Ben,
I know exactly
I don't
who
know,
you
but
mean.
he's still alive, and he's
Mm-hmm.
raising a lot of money, and that obviously the guy's got amazing resilience bouncing back for that. But his Wimmick was there, and it was like, don't go past that Wimmick because that's a minefield.
Mm-hmm.
And we were running off the Chinook just like in the pitch black, like fucking hell.
Yeah.
So there's mines around here, and just like, again, as a young man, just being like, fucking hell, what we into? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All very real. And then I can remember what you were saying, like something out of a movie. When we were obviously in Mog North, I can remember the first time we got mortared. And you felt like you were in the middle of a fucking movie set or something, like, fucking, what's going on here? Like, the whistle and all that, and just fucking
Just the waiting.
Yep.
Yeah. And what about when you were on the gun line as the new guy, Flinny? How did that feel?
Felt alright, to be fair. Like, I had quite a good gun sub.
Yeah.
I had a bloke called Baz Dawson in charge of me. Just felt like an older brother.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? And there was a few older blokes on there as well, which was nice. You know, you didn't have to really worry too much. So like, I think they really took the main burden of everything.
Mm-hmm.
They just let you be a young lad, like chilled and that.
Yeah.
He used to let me go out on the wreckage for the next gun position,
Mm-hmm.
and he'd be like, "Look, you're gonna be out there with just 6 other blokes or whatever it was, 2 vehicles," and he'd be like, "I trust you," and I'd be like, "Jesus Christ," and like, he'd just send you out. He would, yeah. And back then I was a hat as well, so I wasn't even commando trained, and he had commando gunners, and he was like, "No, you can go. You're all right." You know what I mean? And I feel like he didn't trust some of the commando gunners. And then we had a tank action one night where apparently loads of tanks were coming towards us. We actually, in Iraq, it was slightly different. We didn't have like that conventional war where you had like the tanks in front of you and all that. Because of where we was, it was too boggy in a way. You had to use the roads. So if they broke out of Basra, it was literally on the gun line next. The gun line was the next target. We only had like recce vehicles in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
So like when they broke through, when tanks coming towards us, he sent me up on the tank action. And Alex Harvey asked if there was any 18-year-olds. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm 18. And he went, "You're not here. You're going back to the gun line. I'm not having an 18-year-old on my conscience." You know what I mean? So like that was quite real. That was like when you start thinking like, "Oh my God, this could be proper firefight time."
Yeah.
And then when I went back there, they sent other commandos up with him with more laws. And then I actually went as gun number 2. He showed me how to use the thingy, like the fuse setter. And he was like, "Lenny, you got to do this. Once it's set, put it on, wait for the green light to go, pass it in." And that's basically what my job was that night. You know, so it was quite good.
And what about that night? 'Cause I've got a night in Afghanistan, like nothing happened, but suspense. Like
I'll be honest, I was young, and I was fuming that I was taken off that front line.
Right.
Because I went up there with the law.
Yeah.
You know, first of all, and I was like buzzing. I was like, yeah, like this is it. Like you just, because everyone's hyped up. You know, you can feel the buzzing from the bloke next to you. You know, like, and I don't think you ever get that buzz like anywhere in life. You will never get that. And you're just sitting there and you're waiting, and then he's like, "Is there any 18-year-olds in?" I was like, "Yeah, me." And he was like, "Nah,
Get out of
back
here.
in there.
Yeah.
Get back in there, but I'm not having that." And then he was like, "Go back to your gun subs. We need more blokes here." And I was like, we went back in the vehicles, and then they sent more blokes down. But once we started hammering the road, they just didn't want to know. You know, like they were just getting bombarded straight away, like loads of HE flying down on top of them, and they just never come down the road in the end. They turned back into Basra. They just thought, "Oh, we're just going to get smashed on this road," because it was an easy target.
Yeah.
You couldn't drive the tanks either side because it's like a mud field.
Yeah.
Like it's not like a normal area where you could drive them across the plains. They had to stay on roads. So once we had them on the road, you can just hammer the road, and eventually they run into your guns.
What's your feet?
Ideal, because I'm icers over here.
I was thinking that.
Cold.
Have that smoke on.
Lovely.
Well, I actually think when it comes to suspense, I had one night, it was my second Herrick. Nothing happened this night, but we were outside of Sangin DC in the small patrol base that we were just creating. And out, like on my sentry position, there was an orchard, and it was so dark and so quiet. And do you remember the Sophie site that you used to get, the night site? I remember sat there, and we were one British person, one Afghan army person, and he had like spidey senses or something, because he was like, Talib, Talib, Talib. And I was like, oh my God. I'd never been in a firefight at this point. I was like, oh my God, what's he saying? So I flicked the Sophie up. The Sophie was like, super loud. So straight away giving the position away. Nothing there. But I remember just sitting there and just being like at that point of tension for such a long time. And it made me think, like, because you sometimes hear about people that have been overseas and suffer with PTSD and never been in a firefight. But I was just thinking, that experience, you don't need to be in a firefight
you're
to have that.
For it.
Yeah, to have that
it's
sort
on
of
edge.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. Let me get that fire going for you.
Totally. Well, my first kind of contact in Herrick, it was that one where I was like, it feels like I was in a fucking movie. Do you know what I mean? And it's that you're on edge. It's almost like because you've been briefed as well, and you've heard how bad it is. It's not if, it's when. You were on edge, absolute on edge. And I can remember sitting on one of the Pinzagowers. I can't remember if I was reading or something, but I was doing something anyway. And next thing you just heard the motor coming in, and then another one. I just looked up and you just see where it's landed, like fucking hell. And then everybody's just shouting contact and diving in their kind of shell scrapes, and it's then that you realise we need to dig deeper shell scrapes. Like these are fucking absolute shit. You know what I mean? And you laugh at it now because you were obviously fucking shitting yourself. You jumped in there like waiting for this massive bombardment coming in, because you do think it's like what we do to them, basically. Like, right, oh, that's where they're landing, the next ones are coming closer, and like the bracketing or whatever. But it was just the old like shoot and scoot, like kind of IRA tactics that they done, and we found them, and that was the first thing. It was this like SUV tried to like drive past, and we gave obviously warning shots for it to stop so we can go and search it and whatever. They chose not to search, and we had some royal wares as well that were like our kind of protection, kind of out there on our patrols, and they're like firing the 50 cals and stuff for them to stop. Didn't stop, kept going, came over like rules of engagement as we can engage, and it was almost like everybody was a wee bit trigger happy to be like fucking okay, boom boom boom, and it did kind of escalate, to be honest, because they then put a Milan into it, blew it up, and then an A10 came down and did the last kind of run, and I think there was like 6 packs or something, 6 folk on it that ended up obviously dying. And yeah, obviously later investigations went over, and it was they had used the back of the SUV as the kind of mortar plate. It was a shoot and scoot kind of tactic, and they obviously chose not to stop. But that was the first ever time I'd been in contact, and I can remember just being like, from whoa, this is like I'm in the middle of a movie, holy shit, this shell scrape isn't deep enough to that fucking escalated a bit, you know. It was just like fucking hell. And then from then on, Mog North itself wasn't too bad. We didn't have too many, but when we went to Mog South, that's when we had a wee bit more kind of contact, and then obviously, unfortunately, lost Dubs at the end of that.
No, I remember Mog South. I went down there twice, actually. I went down the first time with, I think it was 7-9 who were down there.
Yeah, initially they were, yeah.
And then I was like, because on Herrick 5, I had a really benign job. I was basically setting up comms network around Helmand, so I got around, was quite dangerous in terms of suicide threat was really big, but the suicide bomber threat. But I had one round, I think, fired at me, and I didn't even think it was much of a thing because it didn't feel close or whatever. But the second time, I knew that yous had moved down there.
Yeah.
And I knew that Doobs was down there, and you and your brother, a couple of other lads who I'd worked with. And I was like, I remember saying to the battery commander, because he was heading down for a visit, I remember saying, can I get down? And he just looked at me and he was like, Fitzy, that's not how it works. What are you talking about? You know, I was like, well, do you need a signaller? He was like, no, I don't need a signaller. And so I was like, fine, you know, I made my peace with it. And the next thing I know, he comes rushing in, he goes, pack your bag. And I'm an absolute admin case, but luckily it was all
was all squared away?
It was all in one place. I just chucked it all in the Bergen. And
a dry
Bergen. And it got down there, and I remember going, like, landing, and like nobody knew I was coming. But I went straight to the CP where Doobs was. I was like, any bloody South Africans round here or what? And I just saw this head come round the tent. I was like, it was just funny, man. You know, just seeing like all your mates in the middle of nowhere, you know, and like I always think to myself,
what have you been up to the last couple of months?
Yeah. I always think to myself though, like I don't know what I believe in life. I do believe in fate to that point, because I had no right, I had no business to be there.
Yeah.
And something changed. It was like, right, yeah, we could do with a signaller. Fitzy, get your kit. And I went into Garmsir for 2 days. That's where I got in my little one round fired at me. Yeah. Came back through the American football or rugby ball around, and then me and Daz Worden jumped on the Chinook out of there. And by the time I landed back at Lashkar, the news was out. But what I heard was Marine Dwyer has been killed, and I was like, Marine Dwyer. And so I thought like there was like a little bit of hope with me that it wasn't Doobs.
Yeah.
And then obviously as time went on, you realise it was, and it was wild as, like, you know, like an hour away, an hour had gone by and you'd lost your best mate, and it was pretty wild, you know.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it real, you know. And I think coming out here and trying to remember him, and I think you remember him every day, but it's like really trying to be present and actually think of the times that you had, and yeah, obviously try and stay in touch with his family and stuff like that, which is really good. But
I'd love to get like Basil up or something like that. Or,
yeah,
I know his sister's coming to Scotland, or Mitch might be in Scotland now, I'm not sure.
Not yet.
But yeah, no, I feel all of that, mate. Obviously we've chatted loads about Doobs and Gret a lot about it all, and I am the same. I kind of remember him most days, every day, not just on Remembrance Day. And a prominent thing that I kind of live my life with is like any kind of milestone that happens in my life, I always reflect it back to my mate Doobs. No, he didn't get to live this, he didn't get to get married, didn't get to have kids, didn't get to, and you then try and foster a little mindset of gratefulness that you are, and like in his honour, the best thing you can do is just live your life as best you can.
I think it's so hard to be conscious of gratitude. I find it really difficult. 2 seconds. But yeah, I find it really hard to have gratitude and practice gratitude. I don't know about like you, Flinny. Like I've always wanted to. I always find it very difficult. It's probably one thing that I've always struggled with. But I think that one thing, you know, Doobs obviously died, but one of our friends went on SAS selection, and he had Dubes' beret, and he put it in the back of his Bergen. It's hilarious because he went and did the hills with Dubes in his backpack. He went to the jungle with him in his backpack, and it meant that much to him to spur him on to pass that course.
Yeah.
And I think we've all used him as motivation
Absolutely.
from time to time.
100%. I can remember when I was competing, mixed martial arts, powerlifting, all of this, I used it as fuel. Not just the pain or anything like that, but I would almost like internally talk to him and be like, come on, help me out here, Dubes, you know?
Yeah.
Which to some might seem weird, but it's what I done, and it helped, you know?
It's perfectly natural, like, especially in that environment.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's probably the hardest thing I think that I've ever had to do is because I don't think you come to grips with it. You know, when it happened in Afghan, it was like, I know we were talking earlier on about family, and I remember we had the op minimised where nobody could communicate until the parents had been informed, and that one was a bit longer because they were in South Africa. And I remember basically taking the first opportunity to phone home and tell them, and I didn't even really consider the time that it was in the UK, and it must have been like the crack at like 5 in the morning or something. Insane. And I remember my brother telling me, like, I thought, yeah. So I remember my brother saying, like, he thought it was me. But I always felt guilty for that, you know, because I was out there just doing what I was doing, and up until that point, I didn't consider what was going on back home. I didn't consider what other people were going through. But
I can relate to that as well, because I did 6 months on Herrick 5. The rest of the regiment did 7 months, just with the kind of handover. Can't remember who it was that was handing them over. But I got the opportunity to come home a month early to box in the Army Individuals. And I came home, and it put me in the position of my parents. Now, obviously, you guys know it's just myself and my twin brother, sibling-wise. And to see the look in my mum and dad's face when I came back, and obviously they had been writing to Dubes and sending packages to Dubes, and knew obviously we had been through a bit, obviously, and I could see what it was doing to them, having both of us out there. And the fact that they didn't really know what was going on out there, and I did, and I knew how bad it has been or could be, I was like, I don't know if I could keep doing this to my mum and dad, to be honest. And actually, when Mick, it was Mick, when Mick died, I can remember us all getting put on parade in Seven Barry. Sorry, I'm getting absolutely roasted here. And at the time, the BSM, Stevie Stewart, came out and said, I've brought you all on parade here to tell you something, but I've been informed I can't. All I can say is it's not good news. And I was like, fuck, all right, are you going to at least tell me it's not my brother, not my twin brother? Nothing. Didn't get told nothing. Next day it came out that it was Mick. And how I felt there with Mick, it was like horrible to say. A little bit of relief that it's not my brother. But at the same time, absolute shock that, like, one of the best soldiers that the regiment's ever had has died. And again, it was another kind of reality that could literally be anybody. And it also confirmed exactly what Dubes said. It will not be somebody that's shit that will die. It was literally the fucking best. And that again made me be in that position of, like, my parents and, like, the unknown, knowing somebody had died or whatever. You maybe see on the news and going, oh, I hope it's no It was just, can I keep doing this to my parents?
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, that's what led me and Cammy to get out, is we actually ended up, a bit long-winded, but we ended up having a conversation and decided, like, right, we'll get out for each other, because we both had aspirations along with Doobs to go on selection, and our actual plan was to train for the Hills phase on Pottle Reeve. And then obviously this all happened, and we actually spoke to each other about, you know, what it's doing to my mum and dad, the danger we'd be putting not just ourselves but each other, and we wouldn't maybe know. Like, and obviously I was on the scene, secondary on the scene to the incident that killed Doobs, and obviously how hard that was. Like, I can imagine if that was like my brother or anything like that, it was just like too much hurt. And yeah, we decided to get out. But another point that you made, Fitzy, is you believe that, you know, some things happen for a reason, and you got down there to see Doobs and whatever. And I believe 100 wholeheartedly at that. And I also think that there's subtle signs of things, whether it's God or a higher power or whatever, gives us kind of subtle signs. And I know on that patrol that Doobs went out, that the vehicle that he was actually driving was broke, the wheel was broke, and it was Doobs that actually sorted it. As initially it was, right, this patrol was going out, oh, it's not going out because the wheel's fucked. Doobs then went and worked on it and fixed it, and then it went out a bit later, and then tragically he didn't come back.
Yeah.
And to me that was a subtle sign of it shouldn't have went out. You can say you're reading into it too much in that, but that's how I take it.
It's sometimes hard to have any explanation for things, isn't it? So you have to take it how you
I
see
can
it.
also, when we're talking about op minimise, like, for people that don't know what op minimise is obviously to stop it getting leaked before the parents and stuff know. Now, Doobs obviously being South African, I knew he didn't get a lot of mail, a lot of post, but I knew that it was either that day or the day before he had got a letter from his sister, and he was like super happy at that. I can remember after the incident going to the CP and asking for the letter, and obviously when emotions are really kind of raw, I was like, they need to hear exactly what happened, not just, you know, whatever. I don't even know how in detail they get told about the incident. So I literally wrote a letter to his sister about everything that happened that day. So they got a kind of idea of what happened in the lead up to it, and then how it happened and things. And actually, I would actually love to see that letter again, to be honest, if they ever kept it.
Yeah.
But I know his dad wrote back thanking me for doing that.
It's an incredibly hard thing to do.
I can remember writing it in tears. We were quite lucky though, I think. Me personally, I was quite lucky with. Obviously, the unit that we were in are quite close. That night, we all just kind of stayed up and spoke about everything. And cried and fucking whatever, and then soldiered on, as you do.
I think, see, when it came to processing that, it took me until I came back from Afghanistan, because I remember I did the eulogy.
Yep.
And I would remember writing the eulogy.
Too hot, man.
I remember writing the eulogy, and it took me a long, long time because I was like welling up, but I never broke down. And then I practiced it, said it out loud for the first time, and my voice cracked and I couldn't go on. It was in front of the RSM and another person, the Adj, I think, and I couldn't really go on with it. And then on the day where we did it up on the airfield, I got through it. My voice cracked at the very end as I said the final words, and I stood back in three ranks, and I went off to one side, And that was my time to just let it out. And with the best of intentions, somebody came up to me, put their arm around me, and in those days, you didn't do it, did you? And so I just sucked it all in, and I never let it out until I got home, and I went out drinking, and I absolutely lost it. Like, just drank too much, started sort of kicking off, and then just sort of sat there on my street, and just started bawling.
Yeah.
It took, that was probably a good 6-7 months, but I still think, like, even with your journey, what you're doing now, there's still like some motivation there, isn't there, from the loss of Doobs?
Big time.
But
yeah, I think I definitely didn't hold it in, cause I great straight away with Doobs. But we definitely tried to hold it together when we were like carrying his coffin. I can always remember Lee Fannin like saying to us, "Come on, guys, hold it together. Last thing that we need to do this for Doobs," and just really fighting back the tears and trying to obviously be professional. And then it was just so tough. It was hard. My biggest thing, and it was when I went through the trauma kind of support with it all, was I was annoyed that I didn't physically try like basic life support or CPR or anything like that on him. That's what I was kicking myself for. And it took like a lot of talking and things to understand that better trained medics were there, and like you had a job to do. I suppose I really kind of need to describe the actual incident there, but I'll just go into what actually happened with Dubs. Well, so what had happened in Mog South, we got another kind of gunline commander coming down, and they were basically showing him the kind of lay of the land, prominent landmarks and things like that. And it was just a 2-vehicle patrol, 2 Winnocks went out, and like I said earlier, one of the Winnocks were broken, but Dubs fixed it, and he was one of the drivers of them, the lead vehicle, and we went out on it. I can remember just being in the gun line, and suddenly people just started shouting, and you could see that there was a bit of smoke in like kind of the horizon, and then suddenly you thought it was both Wimmicks, but it was just one Wimmick just flying back, driving straight towards the gun line, shouting medics, medics, team medics. And as I was one of the team medics, kind of jumped in, and another couple of wagons flying and said that, you know, there's been an explosion. Don't know if it's a mine strike or an ID or whatever, but the other Wimmick's been hit, and obviously try to get medical support up there. So we started driving back, and I can always remember being in like the commander's seat of one of the Wimmicks, and there was a medic in the back, and I can't remember who was the top gunner. I think it was Muzz. I think it was maybe Spinky actually. It was one of them. It was Muzz or Spinky, and Paz driving me, and I can remember saying to Paz, like, let's not drive straight into this because it might be a mine strike. But it was quite clear as soon as you kind of drove up to the kind of area that it was a planted ID, because it was on a double track, and obviously where the explosion had been, a big kind of mound and crater. Wimmick had been hit from the front and blown up over and landed, so it was facing the wrong way on its side, and Dubs was lying under it. It was on fire, and Tony Macon, who had been the top gunner, was kind of sat at the side with his face all kind of black because of the smoke, kind of just really out of it. And I can remember just being like, holy shit. Medics get there straight away. We got told to pull our Wimmick to the side and kind of cover our arcs in case this was going to be an ambush. So that's what we did. I told the Wimmick over, told my top gunner where his arcs were and things. Obviously tried to just secure the area so that they could do any medical support. At the same time, kept looking back and seeing that Dubs was still just lying there. The medic had a look at him or whatever. They had put a tarp over him to stop him catching more fire. And they started like really treating Tony Macon. And in my head it was like, right, Dubs must be stable when they're trying to get Tony Macon. Just complete denial. And I can remember just saying to myself, he must be all right. He must just be lying there like stable, and they're just waiting or whatever. Obviously, just a wee bit erratic with it all, making sure my guys were still watching their arcs and just going over it, just kind of over and over. Next thing, it was Muzz that came back, and I can remember giving him obviously a brief. He had came along to it in a different wagon and said, "Oh, the medics are like dealing with him. I think Tony Macon's going to be all right, but I'm not sure about Dubs." And I can always remember the look that Muzz gave me. It was like I was crazy actually, and he was like, "Mate, Dubs is dead. I've just brought the body bags," and that there was just like a absolute dagger to my heart. Like, couldn't believe it. Like, was like almost in a state of panic. Like, didn't know what to do with myself. Just went back to my guys and was like, right, keep watching what you're, just like not wanting to accept it. And then I can remember getting back to the gun line. Obviously, they managed to get the Wimmick out on fire. That I ended up having to kind of pull it back onto its upright, and just seeing the state that Dubs was lying there, it was almost like he was just lying sleeping, to be honest. Obviously quite badly burnt, and got back to the gun line. And I've since learned, because I didn't know this, obviously everybody that was left on the gun line got told, like, don't go up asking the guys what they've just been through or what they've just seen, let them come to you. And my brother Cammy, I can remember him always saying, I was like, aye, fuck off, it's my twin brother, I'm going straight up to see if he's alright. And I can remember him coming up and just being like, what happened? And I couldn't even get the story out, just trying to tell him, but like tears and everything, and I just horrendous. One of the worst days of my life. But yeah, then it was about a wee Robin, like, we all kind of just took care of each other through talking and listening to processing what had just happened, pretty much. And I think that really did help. Obviously, a part of me, like I said, I really struggled with was the fact that I didn't physically go and try and save my best mate. But there was a better qualified person, and that's what you have to remember. And also getting reminded that I had a job, and my job was to ensure that was safe for the better medical person to look at. And that took me a really long time to kind of accept that, to be honest. And just like you said, Fitz, I came back from Afghanistan a very, very angry, bitter person from it.
How do you think you did come to terms with that?
What was that?
How do you think you did come to terms with that? Because we only ever spoke about it when we were drunk.
Yeah.
And I think a huge part of maturing and understanding about people's, grief and whatnot. And we weren't on the education with that whatsoever.
Yeah.
All we knew was I probably got issues with that. It always comes out when he's drunk, but we never tackled it when we were sober, did we?
No.
We never ever tackled it, and that was.
It was almost like we would get drunk and it would be like, right, Fitz, I'm gonna burn myself. Right, Fitz, I'm gonna have to say this story again, and I'm gonna cry. But I know you've heard it a million times, but we're gonna do it again because it felt like you just needed that release.
You did.
When you were fueled by alcohol.
Yeah.
But I think coming to terms that more, it might be a bit of a maturity thing or whatever, or just more accepting the fact that you did what was asked of you, and there was nothing you could do. Do you know what I mean? It was his time, unfortunately. And for me, it came to the point where I didn't need to drink and re-traumatise myself every year when it came to the either Remembrance Day or the 27th of December.
Yeah.
I can speak about it now, and sometimes it will still catch me. Sometimes it will still catch me, and I'll not be able to get through the tears. Other times I can talk about it.
Because you'll never. I think things like that you'll never get over, will you? You'll never
overly.
really get over, but you can be more comfortable sharing your tears, and like, don't get me wrong. I think when I broke down there a little bit, that's probably one of the first times I've ever cried and not said sorry.
Yeah.
You'll probably check the tape and I'd probably say sorry. But I don't feel like I did, and I think that's maturity.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to Remembrance Day, like, it is about the people, and you know, Paddy, Ross, Doobs, Mick, you know, Tom. You know, we probably don't tell as many stories as we probably should, and the impact that they've had on our lives, and like, I think they've had a massive impact on my life. I know they've had an impact on yours and what you've done. I remember one thing that Basil said to me before my second Afghan. You know, he said to me that he forgives the Taliban, and he wants me to forgive him, and the only thing he wants me to do is come home. And I remember telling that to somebody, and I was just in bits. Like, it was so, like,
that's
that
a very
family,
strong individual, I think.
That family and are one of the best families you'd ever come across in your life.
Yeah.
But
that's a very strong man, I think.
Well, I just think we should continue to do things like this. It doesn't always have to be Remembrance Day. In fact, it shouldn't have to be. It should just be because we want to get together.
It's one of these things I've set up. We did it last year. I'm doing it again this year. Is a memorial rock or yomp for Doobs. So, and it's on, you know, the date that he died, but it's more so that I don't get, or I'm trying to encourage not just getting into the habits of, yeah, here's a drink for you, here's a this for you, and all of that. And I'm just like, that's not, for me personally, that's not living. And I also don't think Doobs would want us to be like that. I'm going to go out and do something gopping for you, mate, to show I'm still alive, and do you know what I mean? I'm living my life to the fullest.
Yeah.
And yeah, this year it's happening again, 27th of December. 7 miles for 7 battery, and I am going to try and do it till, well, as old as I can do it. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. I'm with you on that one. Well, so our plans for this year, Flinny, Cairngorm Coffee Club, it's happening.
Coffee club needs to come.
Yeah. So I definitely want to get that Cairngorm Coffee Club. It's going to be one day in the winter. I'm going to have the TP up, free coffee, free place to warm up, free burnt potatoes. That's what it's all about, isn't it?
Lovely.
But for now, we'll call it there. And I'll try and sort this out. But good conversation.
Good man.
Cheers, brother.